Hey everyone, it's Toby from abletondrummer.com. I want to talk to you about this new drum pad, the NonaPad from Millenium, aka Thomann, and if it's worth buying. Okay, so this is a review on this pad, and let me be honest, I had a little hard time making this review. Why is that? Because there are so many drum pads out there, and you might know this one here, the SPD-SX from Roland, which is kind of like the industry standard. So if you see a drummer playing in a pop band at a show, and you hear some electronic drum sounds, in like kind of 90% of those cases, this thing is used here. So this thing came out, and actually it's quite funny. 6 companies put this out already now. So just with the different branding, some have a little bit more internal storage and different colors for the pads. So it's kind of like, before I had this, I already knew a lot about this pad already before it has been on the market. So I got it now for about 10 days to 2 weeks, and I did a lot of things with it. So obviously there are so many different use cases electronic drum pads, sampling pads can be used for, and it's no secret that I'm really just using those for MIDI. So saying I'm using Ableton Live, connect this to my computer, to my Mac, and then I trigger sounds, trigger samples, or even trigger start and stop of backing tracks from this pad. So I'm not so keen and not so excited about internal sounds. I'm not so excited about how to load stuff on there. But I did a full review, or I'm doing a full review here on all those different use cases. Okay, so first of all, let's talk a little bit about the build quality. So, I mean, this thing goes for 200 euros. And the SPD-SX goes for around 750 euros, the basic version. So, I have to say, yes, this is one obviously is a bit better, but they are both made of plastic. You know, they have the same size, or they have very similar size. This one is a bit slimmer. The pads are like a little bit smaller, you know, but you have like you get some good value, I think, if you compare it to what's the standard on the market. Yes, there are some little things here you can see at some point, like colors and stuff are not 100%. I just pressed it to turn it on, so you can see it's taking a little bit more time to load. Now it's there, and you can see on the screen it's kind of like there is something missing there. So, you know, there are a few little things where you see like, well, actually, yes, that's why it's only 200 euros. Okay, so I would say for my purposes this would be fine. So I can see some drummers just getting a backup unit, which is for a lot of drummers kind of impossible to do it with that. Yeah, okay, so that's kind of like what you can say now, because how can I say much about the build quality and the stability without having it used for maybe half a year or something, having toured with it. So you get all like the normal features. You can just buy an SPD-SX clamp, which you can mount on here, and then you can mount it on a stand, so that's fine. You have some trigger inputs, some MIDI in and out, USB MIDI in and out, but more about that later when we come to the certain use cases where this can be applied or not. Okay, cool. I mentioned this already. It was released before by different companies already. So you have some weird stories, and some other reviewers did some reviews, or tried to do some reviews about the other products, or the other pads out there, which are close to the same, just different branding on there. And it hasn't got quite a good reputation before it even came on the market now. So the picture which changed it for me was like that Thomann, aka Millenium, Millenium is just the drum brand from Thomann. Thomann is a really big music retailer in Germany, and they have a really, really good customer support. I have to say this. And it's kind of like they have a 30-day money back guarantees. So it's quite often, to be honest, that I that I find stuff interesting, but I'm not sure. I order it and I send it back if it's not for me, and I never had a problem with them, and they have a really good 3-year guarantee as well. So if stuff is breaking, it's usually quite quick that you get a response and that you get a replace unit sent. So this kind of changed the picture for me. Instead of just buying some pad from Amazon, via Amazon, from a company, you don't exactly know where they are, and you're not sure if they're gonna get back to you if you have any questions. So this kind of like changed the picture for me. The price is great. So and let's see how long it will last and if the build quality holds up. So let's come to the use cases. So in total we have 4 different use cases here. And again, it's no secret, I'm just excited about the MIDI stuff here. So using it with Ableton Live and have the sound somewhere else to be triggered and stuff. But let's go through the first use case, which would be sampling or playing the internal sounds. Okay, so as I know, quite a lot of people are always interested about the internal sounds. I made a video where I'm going through all the sounds. So if you're really into that, just check it out and decide for yourself if you like the sounds or not. You can have 2 different sounds per pad. And so for example, if you play this pad harder, you get an open hi-hat, and if you play it softer, you get a closed hi-hat. So you can put different samples on there, or there already are different 2-layered samples on there. So this way you can have a little bit more expression here and just add a little bit more flavor to the sounds. So that's a cool thing. You get 30 kits on there with sounds, and the funny thing is you actually have 20 more kits here on there, which you can put your own sounds on there. And this info isn't being written in the manual, so that's really exciting, maybe for some people of you. Okay, so second use case would be to put your own drum one-shot sound samples on here. So obviously a lot of people are going more and more into hybrid drumming, meaning they're playing acoustic sets. And maybe you have like a wedding band and you're playing some pop stuff, and you want to put some sounds on there, maybe a clap or something, which will be triggered by your snare via a trigger going into here or just hitting those pads. So for this use case, you can put samples on there. So for one-shot samples, you should be fine with the internal storage, because you only get 512 megabits on internal space here, but one-shot samples shouldn't be a problem to get some stuff on there. Yes, still I would say obviously use case number 4, which is my use case, you could be much more flexible in just using Ableton Live, send the MIDI over, but I mean that's up to you. So I made a few sound packs, so 3 kits in total for some songs where you have a clap and some different clap sounds and some different conga sounds. If you're excited about this stuff, head over to my blog post where I have all the stuff sorted on there. And yes, let's come to some of the weird things about this pad regarding putting your samples on here. So you have, or I advise you to use the Wave Editor software, which you can download from HXW, which is actually another company than Millenium. So that's what it is, what the situation is at the moment. So Millenium is not providing this Wave Editor with their CI at the moment. They told me to, I can use, or you can use the other editor. So go to their page or come to my blog post. All the links are on there for the manual and everything. And you can download the Wave Editor there. It's a little bit dodgy, to be honest, because when you click on download, you are getting like a warning, hey, this is not a secure download from a company from China. You know, it's kind of like, okay, but I did it, download it, install it, and it's working okay. You know, you have to use the Wave Editor. You can edit your stuff on there. Then you can drag and drop your samples in there. You then need to export all the stuff into one file. You need to put this one file on a USB stick. You then plug the USB stick into this thing here, and then you can load all the samples on there. So this is kind of like one of the reasons why I'm into use case number 4, using it as a MIDI trigger only, because in Ableton Live I can just quickly drag and drop stuff, cut it up. You know, it's much quicker and much easier if you need to edit something. And yes, as well, you have 512 megabits of internal storage here, but you only have 20 user kits where you can store stuff. So there is another opportunity or another way to put samples on here. You can put samples into a certain folder, which needs to be sitting in your root file of your USB stick. You plug it in, and then you can import single files here as well. So I did this, and it sounded a little bit weird. So, yes, this whole importing sounds into sample pads is not really like a pleasant experience on this pad only. It's a bit better on other pads, but still it's not like, it's not particularly on the NonaPad that this is kind of such a weird way on, you know. I just want to plug, like if I want to load samples on there, I just want to plug a USB on there, and then it should show up as a hard drive. So this is actually, it should be that way. So and even for the Roland SPD-SX, you know, there is this third-party editor software which is much better than the stuff which you get with a €750 pad. So it's kind of like the whole industry needs to step up the game there. It's not only on there. I think it's like, it's not really user-friendly. Sorry, guys. Okay, so once you have your stuff loaded on there, you can play it fine. You know, I tested it. It's all working. One thing you need to consider, you only have mono. You can only load mono stuff on here. And this brings us to the next use case number 3, which would be playing loops and or backing tracks from this thing, storing stuff on there. Here again, maybe you have some choir or some strings or some stuff which will be played along once your band is playing a song. So for this use case, yes, you can load stuff on there, but limitation number one is you only have 512 megabits internal storage, so that's not a lot if you are playing in a top 40 band and if you want to put 80 songs on there. Okay, so second limitation is here, and that's different to the SPD-SX. You only get a headphones out and a main out, and you can't, so for example, if you need a click track, which obviously should just go to your band, you can't route that out differently, so you're kind of stuck to what's on here. So you even can't set a mono and like a left click track and mix down your stereo backing track to a mono backing track, because it's all converted to mono in here. So there is, so far I don't see a way to get a separate click track out here which only goes to your monitors. Okay, so for this particular use case, I don't see that really happening. To be honest, a lot of people moving from having stuff like this, having tracks, having loops, backing tracks and stuff on here, longer stuff on those pads anyways. Especially when you go professional, people are using computers now, Ableton Live for example. And yeah, and obviously I'm doing a blog, Ableton Drummer, so I'm obviously like leading towards this way. So this brings us to the fourth use case, which is using this thing as a MIDI controller. So MIDI is just different MIDI messages. You're sending a pitch message and you're sending a velocity message. So you can actually play a lot of sounds and much more detailed and with a much better feeling via Ableton Live, using Ableton Live. So the beauty here is this thing comes with a USB-B socket, so you can just plug it in via USB cable to your computer. USB cable is not provided, by the way, but you can just plug it in and it's there. You know, it's class compliant, so that means you don't need to install a driver. You don't need to install a driver even on Windows. I tested it, you know, fine. It's you plug it in and it's there. So that's something, yeah, nice, plug and play. So that's a good thing about it. And because it's class compliant, and that might be an idea not many people had already, because it's class compliant, that means you can even connect it to your iPad. And that's where some excitement is starting here, because if you're using an iPad as a for your sound and samples, or maybe even for tracks or whatever, you know, this is quite a good unit and it's quite a lightweight package here. Use case number 4, using those pads, controlling stuff in Ableton Live works like a charm, you know, it's working as well. The MIDI is fine, the velocity response is fine. If you want to go a little bit deeper with the velocity, you can use, for example, Max for Live device of mine, a velocity curve, where you can edit the velocity curve much more detailed than you can on this thing here. What else? You have one thing which is an advantage and a disadvantage on the same time. Your MIDI notes and the MIDI note pitches which are sending by those pads and by the triggers, but later more about that. The MIDI note pitches which are sent by this pad are global. You can just set them once. So that's a good thing, because then you won't get confused if you have a different kit selected. You might have different MIDI note pitches, so this is how it works on the SPD-SX. So every kit you can set different MIDI note pitches. So this pad could play or could trigger a kick in Ableton Live, and if you go one kit up, it could trigger a snare or whatever. So sometimes that's confusing for people. So the global thing is quite nice, but if you want to MIDI remote stuff in Ableton, let's say you want to switch scenes or you want to trigger a certain scene, you only have 9 pads on this thing here, so you only can send 9 commands here. Again, about the foot switches and about the triggers more later. So if you want to trigger more stuff here, you could check out a Max for Live device of mine, which is especially made for controlling Ableton Live's session view via the SPD-SX. It's called SPD-SX Session Control, but this thing is 99%. There's just one function which is not compatible with this device, with my Max for Live device, but like the majority and all the important stuff is working with this pad here as well. Cool. So we have this pad here, and we not only have this pad here, we have the possibility to plug in trigger inputs here. So if you want to use a different rubber drum pad, or if you want to use an external trigger which is mounted on your acoustic snare, for example, or if you want to add a kick trigger pedal, you can do this. One problem here. Up to this date, usually you can select, and you can select here as well, what kind of trigger type you are connecting. If it's a mono trigger or a stereo trigger, if it's a mesh head, if it's an acoustic trigger, if it's a rubber pad or whatever. And you can select stuff on here as well, but it's just giving you, I think, 5 or 6 different choices, and it's not really clear what those choices are and what the settings are. So yes, you can see ST probably stands for stereo. Okay, you get some idea, but to be honest, and I got assured by Thomann as well, they agreed, it needs to it needs to have some sort of names there, which you can make sure, okay, I'm plugging in an acoustic stereo trigger, so I want to select this kind of preset. So hopefully this will get updated soon. So up to this point, I would say if you want a decent trigger interface, I'm not sure if you're gonna get lucky with this. You need to try it out and see. It really depends on what kind of triggers you're gonna use, and there are so many triggers out there, so it's hard to say if it's gonna work for you or not. Okay, so again, you have two really exciting inputs here, which are the foot switch inputs. So you can attach, and that's one advantage again over the SPD-SX. Interesting. You can attach an FD8, for example. I did this hi-hat foot pedal, and yes, you get like two positions, closed and open, and they will trigger different sounds on here, and they will give you out different MIDI notes as well. So that's quite cool if you want to trigger acoustic drum sounds to some extent. Because, and that's really a shame here, because it could be so cool if you would get the position of the pedal. Usually it's sending a message, a MIDI control change message, which gives Ableton Live or Superior Drummer 3 or whatever, gives your sound generator the info like, is it like half open, nearly closed, you know, you can create some really nice sounds with that. And unfortunately, this information is not sent. It's just closed or open. And here again, in the manual, it's not really clear. You have some stuff you can edit, some values you can edit. For me, it wasn't really making sense. Like, what if I change values there, if the positioning is changing something really, and so it could be much better. Okay, so what else do we have? We have another MIDI in, MIDI out. So you can send back MIDI on here as well and trigger the sounds in here if you really want to do that. I'm not sure why, but some people might want to do that. You got a headphones plug. Did I mention that? I think so. So you can plug in your headphones. You have volume control for those main outs, and for the headphones you have a knob here. So that's all working fine. The menu in this thing, like going through the stuff here, is a little bit, I mean, all those drum pads and all those drum things, just, it's not really like user-oriented experience. Maybe they should get and hire people and pay them well to maybe develop some stuff which makes more sense for users, really. Like it's like after half an hour you kind of understand the basics. As soon as you go deeper, it's kind of like there's stuff hidden there. How do I get back? There is no back button, so you kind of, it takes a little time to navigate through there and to get familiar with it. And if you don't have the patience, maybe that's not really for you, and but mainly that would be for the use cases 1, 2, 3, which I'm honestly myself not too fond of. I think people should use this thing or other drum pads and use Ableton Live. By the way, I don't get paid by Ableton. I just think it's a much better solution for triggering electronic sounds. Okay, cool. If you want to dive deeper into this whole Ableton Live drumming thing, I have an online course. I have a homepage where you have a lot of information, where you will find a lot of information, YouTube channel, obviously here as well. I might even do another review here a little bit further down the line when I maybe see some new stuff here, and maybe I'm sure there is more stuff I didn't mention now, but to be honest, it's like 10 days my head is getting full of this thing now, and I had some struggle with it already, just not because it's not working, but because the info wasn't available. It's a new product, I get this, but the manual is not... It just lacks of user perspective. Head over to my blog post where I will update links to the manual, firmware update. That was really easy. And I started in a short FAQ there as well. So obviously I'm not that interested in... Well, I am actually interested if people have questions about that, but put them in the comments and maybe other people want to join to answer them as well. We have a Facebook group called Ableton Drummer as well. Join there if you have questions maybe. So because I'm getting quite a few emails from people asking me about stuff, I do teach online, so if you want to book a session, that's different. But if people gonna start asking me, is this trigger or that trigger working with this input, that's really what Thomann is for, and they have an awesome customer service. Okay, so let's try to make a conclusion here about the NonaPad. So, I showed you, like with all the different use cases possible. It's hard to say. It really depends on your particular use case or use cases you're gonna use it for. I think you have an idea now for which use case I would suggest this and for which I wouldn't. Okay, so when clients are asking me like which drum pad is best on the market, I usually say there is not the best drum pad. You need to go down to your local store, bang them and get a feel for it, like if it feels good, if the pad, if the rebound, if the overall feeling is good for you or makes sense for you or feels right. So obviously this is a little bit difficult because it's sold online mainly. Well, you can come over to Germany and go to Thomann locally as well to play it, but there are those other SPD-SX clones out there, so similar pads. So yes, they will have a very, very similar build quality and a very, very similar functionality. So actually this is not only a review about the NonaPad, but at this price tag, I think it's a really interesting device if you want to go into use case number 4, if you are triggering MIDI, if you're sending MIDI messages from this pad to Ableton Live, for example. I think this is a really good starting point. Plus, it comes from a company who have a really good reputation for their customer service. They have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Not sure how this whole resend stuff for free thing works for people over in the United States, for example. So obviously this is not as easy as would go in Germany or in the rest of Western Europe. I guess it's probably much easier to do it over here. Yes, okay, so conclusion would be, yes, I think it's good for MIDI drumming. Velocity, latency feels fine, for this price point. I think it's a good, really good starting point. And let's find out if we use this thing a little more. I'm excited about to see the comments in this thread already, because I know drummers are a little bit special when it comes to their equipment. And I guess there are going to be a lot of interesting comments under this video very soon. So yes, stay tuned. Head over to abletondrummer.com if you want to know more. We have this Facebook group I mentioned earlier as well. Come over there if you have any questions about Ableton Live and drumming in particular. So stay tuned. Maybe you want to subscribe to the channel or get some other stuff from my homepage. Info, resources. Other videos are linked there and other cool Max for Live devices, especially Max for Live devices for not only, but for drummers or from a drumming perspective. Okay, cool. Stay tuned. Wow, wow.